if you don't like the reveals of the Timeless Children, that's fine. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it probably won't impact the show.
They're not half-wits you're talking to.
Really?
I mean, you sounded as if you were an infant teacher.
Nerdrotic.com.
Remember when Doctor Who rewrote its entire history in a voiceover montage with actors who did not utter a line? I do. Remember when the BBC completely destroyed one of the greatest franchises of all time in 1 hour of television? I do. Remember when the BBC and Chris Chibnall took away William Hartnell's status as the first Doctor? Oh, I do. Remember when our hero, Tecteun, killed the Timeless Child over and over again to create the Time Lords? I do. Remember the brief period of time Doctor Who Series 12 reached 0% on Rotten Tomatoes? I do. Remember when the Timeless Children received record low ratings? I do, but apparently the BBC doesn't. And this is all the work of the head tosser over at Doctor Who, Chris Chibnall. But apparently an application has been put in for vice tosser from Paul Cornell. But before I get started, if you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. It really does help independent content creators stay competitive on this platform. I am grateful to everyone who has subscribed, and I appreciate your continued support. So leave it to the BBC to screw up the one good thing they had going for them after this utter destruction of the Doctor Who canon, which does matter, and we'll get into that. Emily Cook from Doctor Who magazine organized watch parties that, quite frankly, have embarrassed the BBC, proving that there is an audience hungry for good, thrilling, fun Doctor Who. They're just not into what the BBC is cooking. So of course the BBC decides to sabotage this by inserting the first female doctor played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will now lovingly call Dr. Karen. So what has the BBC and Dr. Karen done this time? Well, with the help of Paul Cornell, who has written a lot of Doctor Who books and comic books and is quite frankly the #1 lickspittle at the BBC at this moment in time, has rewritten his own story. And quite frankly, it was my favorite David Tennant Doctor Who two-parter and story altogether, Human Nature and Family of Blood. And he has done it in such a way that it almost equals the Timeless Children in laziness and offensiveness, because the not-so-subtle middle finger that was extended to some of us in the fandom was not lost on me and not lost on a lot of other people, but it might have been because Paul Cornell, during this moment of togetherness, during this lockdown, bringing Doctor Who fans together, decides to mass block Doctor Who fans, most likely in anticipation for the reaction he was going to get for his latest epilogue for the latest rewatch party, Human Nature and Family of Blood, a great two-parter that now isn't so great. After dropping a bomb on the entire canon of Doctor Who, now the BBC has to mop up and deconstruct each individual Doctor. Those same Doctors we can no longer identify. Is it 537th? Is it 5037th? Is it 5,037th? Or just the 37th? Who knows? For a little background, we're going to go to Rich Johnston's Bleeding Shill. Doctor Who destroyer Paul Cornell kicked off the global rewatch and live tweet of Human Nature and Family of Blood by blocking a large portion of the fan base on Twitter. By penning and posting a new introduction to the two-part adventure entitled Shadow of Doubt. That also brought back Lisa Bowerman's Bernice Summerfield. From there, Cornell joined Doctor Who magazine writer and BBC radio producer Emily Cook, who is the one who has organized these rewatches, as well as director Charles Palmer and actor Lucy Cartwright, to offer viewers a behind-the-scenes perspective on how the episodes came to be, including some great looks at Cornell's pitch and script notes. But Cornell wasn't willing to just let the story end with the final credits, penning and posting a new epilogue, The Shadow in the Mirror, starring Cartwright and featuring an appearance from the 13th Doctor, although Jodie Whittaker was apparently too busy to voice this. The story brings a sense of closure in a number of ways. It most certainly does. It puts the final nail in the coffin. Whatever the original intentions were for these rewatch parties, it's clear the BBC has infiltrated and sabotaged them with Paul Cornell gatekeeping a large portion of the fan base and kicking the hornet's nest that's R.I.P. Doctor Who. Then we get this little nugget of wisdom from Paul Cornell. I think the idea that Doctor Who has a canon was already lying in bits at the side of the road, but I hope tonight will help to wash the concept gently into the gutter. Au contraire, Paul, with the clear vindictiveness that you hold towards a portion of the fandom along with your buddy Chris Chibnall and the BBC, you have brought this entire franchise down into the gutter where your attitude is. I'm going to assume most of you have seen Human Nature and Family of Blood. It's one of David Tennant's best performances, and it gave us The Fury of the Time Lord, where he wrapped the father in unbreakable chains forged in the heart of a dwarf star, where he tricked the mother into the event horizon of a collapsing galaxy to be imprisoned there forever, where he trapped the daughter in a mirror, every mirror, and he trapped the son inside of a scarecrow looking over the fields of England forever. Brilliant Doctor Who badassery, but bullocks on that.
Perhaps the only solid rule of being the Doctor was that doctors don't know much about themselves.
Nope, that's not entirely true. The doctors did know their own life until very recently.
She said she had come here to break another rule.
At this point, why the hell not?
A rule about crossing her own future, about changing decisions her other selves had made and were going to make, because she thought it was a rule that should be broken.
Well, obviously, the first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen, will make decisions for all of her future male doctors and past male doctors because justice is a construct of the patriarchy.
She'd been locked in with some friends somewhere. She'd considered her sins. She'd decided there were several sicknesses in her that needed curing.
Heteropatriarchy, your wrath upon this world is over.
Down with the patriarchy.
There was only being kind to yourself by being kind to others. She said she didn't need me to be sorry.
Of course, the first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen, doesn't care about the murderer of a little girl being sorry because it's all about her moral superiority.
And she took a big hammer from her pocket. I jumped back from the mirror as she smashed it.
That was the Doctor Who canon.
She smashed it time after time, smashed it into a million pieces.
That's what you call symbolism.
And then she held her hand out to me. The expression on her face was stern, not welcoming.
This not only desecrates a great David Tennant performance, it's a slap in the face to the Doctor formerly known as the 10th Doctor.
That I would be free to live and die as I should have in the first place. That she had made this decision for me and for herself and for all her other selves.
This is a perfect example of the horrific writing we have gotten from current Doctor Who and the horrific morals behind the people creating this trash. Our hero, the first female Doctor played by Jodie Whittaker, who we will lovingly call Dr. Karen, frees an alien wearing a little girl as a skin suit. This brings us to Radio Times, the organization that is helping put on these rewatches. They recently did a podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about canon.
So it's Doctor Who isn't about kind of like hard mythology and immutable canon, and it's this sort of constantly living, breathing, constantly evolving thing. Like having said all the stuff about it constantly changes and canon shouldn't be fixed. I think part of the appeal of Doctor Who is the fact that it has been running so long and it has this enormous mythology.
This is going to be a roller coaster ride.
And also, like you say, I think there's a point at which we kind of just have to think, is this something that, are we using canon as an excuse for criticizing something when maybe we just didn't like it, or maybe it wasn't executed very well? Like maybe we don't need to say, oh, this person's taken a blowtorch to, Doctor Who history. It's kind of like, well, no, like maybe it was just a story I didn't like, or maybe it was a bad story.
This was not only objectively a bad episode of television written poorly by the hack Chris Chibnall, it was indeed that very same Chris Chibnall taking a blowtorch to Doctor Who history.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's like this terrible insult and against the rules, like someone's broken the rules, which, who wrote those? Who decided what was what,
Showrunners make the rules, and Chris Chibnall decided to break them because he didn't have the talent of his predecessors. The ultimate arbiter of those rules are the fans, and 6.27 million of them in the UK left from Jodie's first episode to the last one that aired.
I mean, yeah.
And what's great about the show, not ever obeying its own rules or even having rules, really.
You could tell these guys are having a tough time with this.
If you don't like the reveals of the time as children, that's fine. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it probably won't impact the show.
I know what you did. You're a damn pedant. All right, just get the hell out of here. Huh? I got a goddamn
We're not talking about the Doctor growing an extra toe on his left foot. We're talking about swapping the Doctor's gender and then completely destroying the Doctor's history to help cement Jodie Whittaker's legacy because they couldn't do it through good storytelling. That's why you lost 60% of your audience.
No.
And could well be altered or tweaked, in a few years anyway. And because I think you're right in that what's important with Doctor Who is not the facts and figures. It's not like yeah, the Doctor has two hearts, but who cares, really?
And then also, kind of, you can't really have it both ways, right? Like, you can't kind of say this is important because of the history, and then also say, but we can do whatever we want to the history. Like, I think it kind of varies. I think you kind of have to walk a fine line.
This is just sounding downright sad, and this is the problem you have when you turn entertainment into a political platform. Things get downright ugly, and Doctor Who fans sound like they're in an abusive relationship because they are. And if there was any doubt that the BBC had infiltrated this event, Paul Cornell, the last thing I want to say is the person who brought the first part of this trilogy, The Shadow Passes, to you was Chris Chibnall, who's responsible for the destruction of Doctor Who and all the official Doctor Who destruction content designed to help people in lockdown. Round of applause to him. Hashtag no doctor of mine. Hashtag no Chris Chibnall of mine. And yes, Paul Cornell did block a hell of a lot of us on Twitter, leading to Gareth Roberts, former Doctor Who writer, to chime in with this. Thanks everyone for DMing me humorous screen grabs of Cornell wanging on, but after 30 very long years, I'm fully aware of exactly what he's like. Obviously, canon matters, and what you are hearing is pure, unadulterated shill. Let's go to a few of my chats from my live stream yesterday where we talked about this. Sonic Spaz, canon matters. Every religious group and society built around a story can attest to this fact. Society crumbles without a narrative canon. John Zeller, hey Gary, been watching Doctor Who from day one, and it kills me to see what they've done to it. It's truly sad and sickening. Agent Zero, if canon doesn't matter, why are they infiltrating established franchises to spread their message? Very good question. Thundercats Ho, canon is the anchor to our long-term passion, and it's the reason this show lasted for 50 years, and it's the reason it won't last very much longer. Sarah B. Hail, Gary, how did I survive 50 years before now with storycrafters telling well-written epic tales with engaging protagonists and challenging antagonists? I don't know, Sarah. Thank God for Paul Cornell. I'm loving how Doctor Who is right now. It's so much my Doctor Who. My Doctor. Hashtag Doctor of Mine. Thank you all for being so kind, never cruel or cowardly. Good night. Now, over the last couple of months, I have been covering issues with the New Warriors and Snowflake and Safe Space with Marvel Comics, Gotham High with DC Comics. Of course, we recently learned of the female-centric Star Wars with Disney Star Wars, but I guess the BBC was feeling a little left out, so they decided to remind us that they were the reigning leader in sacrificing a franchise on the altar of agenda. But a lot has changed since the last Doctor Who episode aired, and those constructs were byproducts of an affluent society. People aren't going to be buying intersectional feminism, identity politics, or political correctness anymore as much as you want them to, BBC. Just remember, every time Paul Cornell puts out a tweet like this, we get a new person using the hashtag RIP Doctor Who, like Philip Morris, who has been featured on the Doctor Who YouTube channel because he's the one who has been tracking down all the old episodes. Hail, Philip. Listen, there's nothing wrong with these Doctor Who watch parties, but it's proven without a shadow of a doubt that Doctor Who is dead and its best days are behind it. And I'll leave you with this, a tweet from Russell T. Davies from a rewatch a couple of weeks ago. This isn't quite so exciting now that we know 557 other Doctors could have turned up here.
And at the moment, Timeless Children doesn't have that because it's a fresh new change. If the aftermath is played right and it's explored in an interesting way, it could end up, eventually being held in the same lofty heights as the Time Lord reveal in the War Games.
Jesus Christ, great. Special thanks to Starry-Eyed Girl, Nola at the TARDIS Zone, and Jer Hermy for help with this video. Everybody have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe. Be safe, and I'll see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.